Guys, welcome back to the Independent Investor channel. A lot of people invest and they may not know why, or they have never really sat back and asked the question of how much your investment could be worth into the future. And for a lot of people, that validation comes through running your figures through a compounding interest calculator. And in this video, I'm going to take you into the Trading Academy and actually show you what I feel is the best compounding interest calculator available on the market. Because what we're going to allow ourselves to do is input the expenses that can be expected over your investments and how those could potentially affect your investments into the future. Guys, if it's your first time tuning into the Independent Investor channel, I highly encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We're looking at empowering individual investors to take the power back for themselves, cut out the middleman, and get their direct exposure to the stock market so they can reap all the rewards. And guys, when we're looking at asking the question, why do we invest? How much could my investments grow into the future? A lot of people don't do their homework in validating why in fact they're investing. They really just want to put their money to work with a financial planner, or they want to just put their money away and they want to ignore it, okay? And that can be one of the biggest mistakes in really understanding your financial goals in the future. And a compounding calculator, with taking into account the expenses within the account and understanding that in an expense-based account or a fee-free account, what the difference between those two is, and it can kind of help keep you in line with what your financial goals are into the future, guys. So without further ado, I'm going to walk you through a realistic compounding scenario, and you guys may be thinking, okay, does this apply to me? This exercise that I'm about to walk you guys through applies to everyone, okay? It applies to everyone. And there's so many people out there that are talking about, why not try to outpace the market? Why not try to achieve a higher than average rate of return? On the Independent Investor channel, we really look to use historical data to forecast a realistic rate of return going forward. And the question becomes, can we use that realistic rate of return to meet our financial goals down the line, okay? And a lot of people get sidetracked by all the noise in the industry talking about, look, you need to have representation. You need to try to seek out a higher than average rate of return in the stock market. And what you're gonna find is that if you sit back and run your own numbers, run your own program on how much you want to start with and how much you want to contribute per month and what anticipated rate of return you want to go after, whether or not that amount that is projected through the compounding interest calculator is going to help you meet or even exceed your financial goals into the future. And I think for a lot of people, they're going to come to the rationalization and realization that you do not need to seek that representation from a lot of people who are really trying to sell you on beating the market. And you guys are going to find by running the numbers for yourself that it's really just not necessary to seek those over an average returns, guys. So I'm going to kick you into the Trading Academy, which is my favorite source for walking through the compounding calculator exercise. I really, really hope you guys enjoy. So welcome to the Trading Academy. These are some of the most enjoyable little clips that I do when I walk you through what it is that I use to validate, why we invest, how much money we can potentially look at growing into the future, and allowing a tool to let us know, visually what the power of the compounding effect is over our money. I think this is really, really important, but this is basically our scenario building page. I've included this link on the bottom of every single video that I've pushed through YouTube. I feel like it's that important of a tool to utilize, and it's very, very simple to use. But this is basically the building and the structure of what our dollar cost average plan is going to look like, for a lack of better terms. And you can kind of see here, guys, we can leave the starting amount of $1,000. Some of you have less, some of you have more for a starting amount. But to demonstrate the importance of this exercise, I'm actually going to kick this up to, let's say, 30 years, for example. And we're going to do contributions. Typically, a starting amount, I always recommend that there is no there's no right or wrong starting amount. I think for someone who's looking to start investing, it's way more important psychologically for you to start with, you know, $25 as opposed to not start at all, because that $25 is going to, you know, help you get mentally conditioned to pay yourself first, okay? Make no mistake, this field is about paying yourself first. But for the sake of exercise, we're going to kick this up to $100, okay? And a lot of you guys have a lot more than that to contribute. A lot of you have a lot less, and that's totally fine. I've been very open about when I started with $25. I actually started with $1,500 of starting amount after I sold a car to actually start my retirement account. So that's how firmly I believed in this program. And, you know, in retrospect, it was one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life. That of which why I'm trying to share this message with anybody out there. And if there's one person that watches this compounding exercise as I build it out and is empowered and enlightened by it, then I think we're realizing the benefit of why we do this channel in the first place. So down here I typically do an annualized rate of return of 7%, okay? Most of the ETFs that we recommend, you guys just saw my Vanguard special on ETFs. You know, you can see that most of the funds or ETFs do outperform that 7%. I know even VTI, as safe as that is, performs at a 7.5% clip. But for investment, or excuse me, example's sake, we're going to use 7% in our exercise here. And we're going to do the first investment fee. And this is where this compounding calculator differs from most, okay? In that you can come in here and you can actually put the expense. And remember on my intro, if you were interested in understanding, you know, what this 1.67% in, let's say, a mutual fund and how that could affect your money over time, you can input that value here. But for the sake of this example, we're going to use 0.04, okay? That expense ratio comes from the two flagship ETFs that I recommend in VTI and VOO. All right, again, information that I showed you on the Vanguard page where you can go on and shop that out and validate it for yourself, okay? Now, a lot of you guys are hitting me up and you're talking about, well, we've got fees over here and we've got fees over here, and what about the dollar cost average fee and the dividend reinvestment fee? All those fees lumped together from an industry perspective is around 3%, okay? So 3% for a lot of you guys, and I've heard the justifications behind, hey, 3% doesn't sound like it's that bad, right? I'm paying to have my money managed and represented. It must be worth it to pay 3%, right? Doesn't really sound that bad. All right, for you guys that have that opinion and are curious to know, prepare for an eye-opening experience when I actually hit the calculate button on this, okay? You're going to want to calculate, and then you're going to actually want to view reports. So when we kick in here, this is going to be the difference here. Now, this is a 30-year scenario that we've built out here, and an annual fee of 0.04 produces a difference of over $50,000 over 30 years compared to a 3% annual fee, okay? Now, these numbers can adjust. Obviously, if you adjust the number of years that you have, if you're out there and you're 20 years old and you have, you know, 40 years of investment, you're going to find that that extra 10 years is going to bump this up significantly with regard to the difference between the two scenarios. And this is really where the rubber meets the road here. And just for example's sake, this is what we're looking to compare. All things are the same, okay? These two scenarios are going to act completely the same, right, on an annualized rate of return of 7%, and here's the 0.04. This is where the scenario changes, okay? So instead of a real return of 7%, your real return is 6.96% rate of return. But look over here, guys. On your 7% rate of return, it changes and is reduced by 3% year over year to 4%. Now, your contributions remain exactly the same, okay? But when you notice here, look at the power of your $37,000. It's allowed to grow to over $125,000 as opposed to over here, the same amount invested,
is only allowed to grow to $71,000 over the course of that same 30-year period, guys. So this is really where the rubber meets the road. This is why we talk about, you know, what if you had 40 years? What if you had 50 years? Guys, plug that into the investment calculator. What if you were able to gain a real return of 8%, not 7%? What if you were able to gain 9% year over year? What if you were able to contribute more than $100 a month? Okay, I think you guys can all imply that if you add those values in that are more in line with what you can practically do, you're going to find that the separation between this fee number 1 column and the fee number 3 column is extremely expansive. And the more you have to contribute and the more time you have, the wider these disparities get between these two fee structures. And that is the beauty of this compounding calculator. It allows you to compare fee structure 1, fee structure 2, and fee structure 3 here. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to kick you back over to YouTube for the closing of this video.
So we have just come back out of the Trading Academy exercise where we take a proposed rate of return and a starting amount and a dollar cost average amount, and we compare different scenarios within that compounding calculator. And I get a lot of questions all the time. Ryan, I've got a mutual fund that charges me an expense ratio of 1.67%. How much is that going to cost over the long term? The compounding calculator can be used to give yourself those answers. What I want you to kind of understand is a lot of financial planners will use a compounding calculator to justify and rationalize the power of compounding to get you sold and excited about the prospect of investing, okay? They're only telling you half of the truth, okay? Because what the exercise I just ran you through should demonstrate to anybody who's interested in understanding the totality of finances is to understand the amount of expense you're paying for the exposure that you're seeking out, okay? You have to take into consideration the amount of expense because that expense comes right off the top. Remember, you take all the risk and then that expense comes off the top, whether or not you're paying the expense or not, okay? Your exposure to the stock market can be relative, all right? But you have to take away the key from this exercise is to give you that validation, but to give you that realistic validation to take into consideration and to compare the difference between how empowered you can be as an individual investor compared to how restricted you are in a managed situation. Guys, if it's your first time tuning into the Independent Investor channel, I highly encourage you to subscribe to the channel. You need to share this message with anybody out there that you know looking to get involved in the stock market for the first time. We give that foundational, principled approach to investing, the tried and true method of investing, the way that investing has worked traditionally in the past. We don't wave magic wands on the Independent Investor channel. We do not seek unrealistic, higher than average rates of return on the stock market. Why? Because it's not possible. Nobody can forecast where the stock market will go into the future. And we tend to rely on fundamental basics of investing with the least amount of risk, the highest amount of exposure, and the least amount of fees in your investment account. So make sure that you share the message with anybody out there. Leave your comments at the bottom of this video, guys, and we will see you on the next video, guys. Good luck in your investment future.